Okay, so welcome to Christ and Culture podcast. Maybe we should do a round of introductions for those of you who are new, joining us in 2024. I'm Janeen.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Jelani.
So today we're doing something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to talk about, we're going to just break down a Bible story. So we challenged ourselves to read Joshua chapter 2. This is a story of Rahab. Well, she's not the only one in the story. It's really Rahab and friends, you know? So
Sure.
Rahab and the crew.
yeah, Rahab and the crew. So, wow, something crazy just came into my mind. And I feel like Oscar would do this, so I'm going to do it too. Because I said Rahab and the crew, I said in my head, she loving the crew. And then when you think about her occupation, it's like, wow. She loving the crew.
Yeah.
Wow. Until she, but God.
But God.
Right.
Wow. She was loving the crew.
She was.
So maybe we should just do a quick recap and explain what actually happens in this chapter so you all can follow along with it.
So even before that, the chapter before that is Joshua 1, and basically Moses has died and God has given Joshua the commission of being the leader of the Israelites. And from there, he's encouraging him, telling him to be strong and courageous and pretty much what he should be doing as leader. And then when we get to chapter 2, we get over to Rahab. And so anyone want to take it from there?
So Rahab is a prostitute.
She's like, we just gotta put that out there.
Right. And she basically, they came to her and she was like, I know who you are, and I know that God is with you, and I know that this battle, whatever battle is coming, you're gonna win. So because of that, I'm gonna do whatever I need to do. If I need to hide you, I'm gonna hide you. I'm gonna just spare my life and spare the lives of my family. And from there, God did spare her, but there's all the things that happened.
Yeah, a lot of nuance in between that. So Joshua, being the leader now, sent out some spies into Jericho to kind of survey the scene and figure out, because I guess we have to get some context about Jericho. So at the time, Jericho is an extremely fortified city, and it's essentially on their path to reclaiming all the land that's really due to them. They have to break Jericho, otherwise they just gonna be slumped. Like, they have to take them out or they can't go forward. So it's essential for them to essentially have not really a battle, but to remove this obstacle.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the city of Jericho at this time is highly into idolatry. I mean, like, it's excessive at this point. Everything that they've been blessed with, they credit to their idols instead of crediting to God, which is an interesting contrast, because when the spies do encounter Rahab, what she tells them is that, hey, look, basically we scared of y'all.
Right.
We scared of the God y'all serve, because we heard about what y'all did before you came over here to Jericho. So it's like they continue practicing idolatry under this false security of the walls that surround them, knowing all the while how powerful God is, because God has already wiped out 2 Amalekite kings and a gangload of people. And at this time, this is when God is really about that business. He's like, nah, don't keep the mamas, the daddies, the kids, the oxen, the sheep, take everybody. So they're afraid of the wrong thing. You see what I'm saying? What are we talking about? How did we hear nuances that happened before that? So the spies encounter Rahab. I guess strategically, this is the safest choice for them. Because you gotta imagine, if you're coming into a country or into a city that's practicing idolatry, you probably decked out, jewels, very, very gaudy and flashy. And I doubt the Israelites were, G'd up like that. So they look strange coming into this land. So it's not like they can just pull up to a Best Western and be like, so I'd like a room for 2, please. No, they need to go somewhere a little bit more discreet.
Yeah.
And how much more discreet is it for 2 men to step into a prostitute's little home brothel?
There we go.
Pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much shoot. I mean, even with going to a little bit of what you were saying, even just to encounter what she said. And I was talking about this earlier with Jess, and I'm like, the story of Rahab shows us how much our interactions with people matter in the sense of, as Christians, as we testify to other people about the goodness of God. And if you're testifying all the time about how good God is, people might not believe, but they recognize there's something different about whoever you serve. And I'm like, that's all it took. Like, it was, they were, I guess, in a sense, they heard only by word of mouth, and all of a sudden she's like, all right, like, I like that. I'm going to stick with y'all. Like, it was a complete faith action. She had every reason. I mean, I guess she kind of was left with two options. It was either die or or pretty much take a chance. But I mean, still the fact that she heard, and that's good enough for some people. She didn't even need to see it. She just heard it. Right. And that was good enough. And like that changed. And not only did that affect her, that affected her family
for generations.
And for generations.
And God is Jesus.
Yeah. Exactly.
God is Jesus, because Rahab and Jesus, they're in the same lineage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it shows you how much your faith. It shows you how much your faith is not just for you.
Period.
Like, it's really not for you. Like, her faith, the lineage, but it saved her brothers, her sisters, her mom and dad. Like, it's literally our faith is tied to the people that are around us, whether they are aware of it or not.
Yeah. Right. It's that overflow blessing.
Yeah.
Because we know that Jericho gets destroyed and, Rahab put the little cord out or whatever it was and her family was spared. Imagine just telling your family, like, hey, so some Israelite spies came over earlier. Just, like, had them hang out for 3 days, you know what I'm saying? While we have a little flax on the roof, we was chilling. And, they said they're going to save us when they take the city. So just pull up and don't go outside so you can be spared. So it's not just her faith testimony; it's all the faith of her family because they're spared in that overflow grace. You know what I mean?
And then how they were like in the direct line of if her house is attached to the wall.
Period.
It's not like she's deep into Jericho in some hidden part of the city. She's like right there at the wall. Like if they wanted to take her out, it would be easy.
Yeah, that's crazy. What gets me up. Going back to the family part is Rahab had to have been a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. Like they describe her as a prostitute, but just because you in sin or just because you're doing some stuff that you're not supposed to be doing doesn't take away your God-given like love and light and authority, like
and discernment too.
And I love that because when you said her whole family, like her whole family trusted her so deeply, and they describe her as a prostitute, and if you're on the outside looking in and you think like people think that prostitutes are like the lowest of the low, but they're not. They're humans, just like the rest of us. And they chose the lifestyle, but it's still just it's a lifestyle. It doesn't necessarily, it didn't reflect who she thought God was.
Exactly.
And I think that's really powerful to remember.
Right. She had her professional identity, but then there's her identity in Christ.
Yeah.
And we talked about that too. We were talking about how I think it's interesting that they chose that he's intentional with everything, right? So they could have stopped at anybody's house, but for it to be a prostitute is intentional because I think those examples in the Bible show people and give people hope that it doesn't matter. Your current circumstance does not, like you said, change your God-given identity. Mm-hmm. And I think, imagine if every Bible story, the only people who were used were people who we saw as living the perfect lifestyle, and then there would be no room for hope for people who aren't. And so I'm just like, I love this example of Rahab because my Rahabness might not be prostitution, but it might be something else, and it definitely is. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely something that I'm doing that is not God all the time, but my faith. You know.
And then, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And then even the testimony of Rahab being able to be like, I used to be a prostitute.
Yeah.
I think it's really important because we step out of the lifestyle that we once had. Like, I think of me in my 20s. I tell my young people all the time, and this is going to sound so funny, but I tell my young people all the time, I was the hottest hoe. I mean, I wasn't really a hoe, but really, like, I was out there way too much. And, like, they laugh all the time, but I was
But really,
really
it's a
insecure
testimony.
when I was in my 20s. And the way that I used myself, because I didn't know myself, that was a real part of myself. And, like, they see this professional family woman. They know I'm in church. But, like, I was no different than you at 21. I was out in these streets and searching for something that was not right for me.
Right.
And as embarrassed, like, as even as I say it out loud, like, I say it with them in confidence, but now that I'm saying it and I'm on a podcast, I'm like, oh, okay.
You said Jesus.
I really just said I was the hottest hoe. But the reality is, like, we should not be afraid of that testimony. I know who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. For all those that say you can't, and not that I'm just saying. I'm just saying, the reality is, like, some of us used to be who we're not proud of.
Right.
Like, we did things that some of us used to be ex-gang members. Some of us used to sell drugs. Some of us didn't do any of that, but we struggled with, like, body issues where, like, maybe we have, like, body dysmorphia. There is a lot about us that, like, we think that we shouldn't be talking about. And I love that Rahab, it's the permission. Like, I don't even know if she realized she was giving permission to be able to be who she was at one point and have that be the poster child of this story. Like, it's incredibly life-changing, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
She was not confined to that
title,
to that portion of her life. She wasn't. And what I think about is, you know, we're talking about, like, okay, Rahab was in these streets, you know what I'm saying? She was this, she was that, and then she did this and she did that. And I had to ask myself when I was reading it, I was like, could I have been Rahab? Like, could I have done what she did if I was put in the same situation? And I didn't come up with an answer. I would like to think that I would be like, yeah, I would. But I don't know if that's true. So that's a question that I ask myself. I'm asking y'all, because maybe you don't need as much time to sit with that question. Or we could skip it.
I didn't know. So I think that's an excellent question. And for me, this is like in my like top 5 messiest portions of the Bible, just because of the dynamics that are going on. Because, like, first of all, as a man, like, and I step back from the Bible being the Bible, and I look at it as a book, and someone actually recorded what was happening. There's some details for me that just are kind of off. So Joshua sends 2 spies into the city to look over the city, and these 2 men just happen to find the prostitute's house.
Period.
So you have 2 men of God sent on a mission, and they end up
of all the houses.
You know, let me while I'm on mission, let me go ahead and find the prostitute's house while I'm doing what I'm doing.
Here I am thinking that it's strategic, and here you are like, no, it was definitely intentional, but also strategic.
It could go, but in my mind, I'm like, first of all, they found the prostitute's house, and for me also, my mind always jumps to Hebrews that she's in the Hall of Fame of faith per se.
That's the craziest part, I feel like, out of all of it. Yeah. Like, people would say what she wants, but her name's in the Hall of Fame. Like, it's ingrained forever.
Right.
So while she's a prostitute, and it's like, she's a prostitute, they found her. They were with her. Do with that what you will.
Right.
While she was there, being a prostitute, she was still able to be a faithful person.
Right.
And I'm like, time out. And the reason this gets messier, other than men of God going to look through a city, finding the prostitute's house, part of what comes out of her mouth is a lie.
Let me tell you, that's my question. I said, how do we reconcile as Christians that what was the saving grace in this story is a lie?
That's what I was going to ask after
we
you're
have
done.
a commandment that is not to lie. And I have an answer. I didn't read over the answer that was in that study guide.
No, but it was that. Was it like, okay, the lie? Like,
the answer I came up with is...
Do it.
Okay, it is situational. And I think the situational awareness is the motivation behind the lie. So when we think about the timing of when she lies before she gets them to make this covenant or oath with them to save her and her family. So she's not doing this selfishly. And if anything, by her lying, she's putting herself, her family, her business, her livelihood, all at stake on the off chance that these are truly men of God who will honor their word to save her. So her motivations weren't selfish. And she also, first of all, let's go back to why she might be in the Hall of Fame. Your girl, like I said, I gave the guys, the Rahab the Spies, the credit of being intentional by going here. But let's talk about Rahab for real though. So, they haven't even been in town that long. And word on the street is, there are some Israelites here, there are some spies here. The word gets so quick to the king that he got messengers at her door instantly. But your girl Rahab is so forward thinking that she's like, if I'm thinking this, I know the king is thinking this. And she's like, well, the custom of our time, everybody and their dad is outside with flax on the roof. That's just a thing. So I'm going to just go up there, I'm going to take them up there, and I'm going to just tell them to stay quiet. I got you. And Rahab is she's so smooth with it.
Yeah.
She every good lie has a little bit of truth. We all know this. She starts by saying, yeah, they were here, and just as quickly as they came, they left. And you might be able to catch them if you leave now and head left. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So she understood that to decrease suspicion, she needed to admit that yes, they did come here to throw them off the trail. And then she says, nah. So I realized, to me, I was like, this was an acceptable version of a lie. And because it wasn't to save her own skin, it was to further the mission of Christ. And then I had to think of, what's an example where a man of God or woman of God lies and it does not work out for them? So me and Dave were talking about this, and we came up with when Abraham lies about Sarai. He says, he's like, hey, we finna get on into Egypt, and you good looking. Hence why I'm with you. So I know if I think you look good, they gonna think you look good, and what they gonna do is they gonna take me out the equation and take you. So just rock with me when I say you're my sister. But what happens? They snatch her up anyway. She's in Pharaoh's house. All these plagues is coming so much that he's just like, listen, I don't know what y'all got going on here, but y'all can take her back. So had he just told the truth and they took her anyway, chances are there still would have been plagues and he still would have got her back. So I'm just like, his motivation was like, oh, I don't want to die. So where was his faith? Rahab had faith in a God that she had never seen, to a faith that she had never practiced as far as we know of. And she was like, I'm so committed. I believe the word that this that I have to do will be furthering the mission of Christ. So yes.
So she's she's a perfect example of faith. So I was watching Tony Anderson preach a sermon, and he pointed out something. He says, what happens with humans is that we wait to see something, and then we're like, I believe God. But Rahab was different because she just heard it and that was good enough. And so she's like the perfect example, which makes sense why she's even in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11, because she shows what your faith should look like. And I thought to myself, I said, yikes. Listen, I'm the type where I gotta see it. Listen.
Yeah, so I don't know. To answer my own question, I don't know if I could have done.
But I don't know. I think I potentially would have if I believed wholeheartedly about God's mission. I think wholeheartedly I would have taken the risk of it. But if I didn't believe, then I would have been like, yeah, nah, this ain't gonna work out. But if I truly, was at a point where I believed, I feel like I would have been like, yeah.
I mean, I only transparently asked that question because we know now. And we have so many opportunities to do what we've been called to do to further the mission of Christ. And we're like, yeah, I'm gonna get the next one though. So
no, there's measures of faith. You mature in faith. So I think, Janeen, you gave all the details necessary, in my opinion, from my perspective, to see why God honored that kind of faith. I don't think that's the faith God would accept and cash in on 30 years later.
Right.
This is a woman living in Jericho, only has heard about God, and her faith is, I'm going to put my life in the line of fire
Right.
to save these people, because I heard that there's a God who is amazing. So God is like, the faith is there,
Right.
but it's a young faith
Mm-hmm.
that still lies. It's a young faith that still sleeps around,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
but it's still faith.
Yeah.
And if there's faith, that can grow.
That can grow. Yeah.
So you kind of have to be careful with that, where it's like, okay, yes, God honored the faith of someone who was sleeping with people and lying. You don't stay there though.
No.
Yeah.
But also, just because someone's doing that does not mean they are unfaithful.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think too.
No,
I think we're in a super unique position as people born after Jesus, because
Right.
the faith looks so different for her than it does for us, because it's kind of like for her, like she heard that about God, she heard about these things. We have also heard, but at the same time, Jesus came in human form, died, and re-rose, and that's like a completely different, like, I don't want to say it's easier to believe when you believe after Jesus,
Okay.
but imagine trying to believe before him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just think the positioning is so different. I
Well, I never thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we have the blueprint.
right. Like, we're
We don't
blessed.
have that at all.
Because even when we have faith in what we can't see, it already happened. Like, Jesus already died. So my faith is based on the fact that Jesus died and rose for me, and I know this to be true.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have that.
Right. Absolutely.
You see, when it's good, it just got settled. Everybody's like, yeah, just keep preaching.
Oh no.
Oh.
Man.
How does this relate to culture?
Mm.
We are Christ in culture. I want to tie it in.
Well, immediately when you said that, I'm thinking about what Pastor Rashad was saying about how your faith grows and matures. And I think about like how even though we live in a time where culture is so relevant to everyday life and Jesus, it's like, how do we allow our faith to mature and for us to be mature Christians living in the culture that we live in, you know?
Absolutely.
I think also, like, it was expected for her culture for her to give them up,
Yes.
and she didn't, which means that we, living in our time, will have to do things that are contrary to culture because it's right.
Yeah,
So,
it's true.
That's always easier said than done.
oh girl, talk about it.
Always.
Talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just like being the best version of yourself that you could be.
Yeah.
And in that, being kind and loving, but also not allowing people to walk all over you, but also doing it in a manner that behooves Christ. And I think sometimes that's really difficult, especially because I think when it comes to God's people, we really are in a battle. Like, I'm constantly being put on a pedestal where, like, people are coming at me because of maybe the position that I'm in, coming at me because I'm a Black woman in this, work field, or coming at me because I'm younger than they think. I think everyone thinks I'm way younger than what I am. So based on that alone, they're coming at me because they think I'm in my early 30s, not even knowing that I'm like a lot older than they can imagine. And not even recognizing they're coming at me because I'm a child of Christ. Like, they think it's because I'm young. They think it's because I'm a Black woman. They think it's because of this. They think it's because I have my back. No, it's really because I am a child of God. And because I have a light about me, I irritate your darkness.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we have to start to, if we're not already, recognize that piece in how we are to show up in the world. And it's hard. Like, I had a situation recently. I'm now a part of HR. But a lot of people don't recognize that in my organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember saying something like, do they understand I'm part of HR? And then I was like, that sounded so crazy, like, and so full of pride and ego that then I had to go back and be like, okay, Nicole, it's not about that. Like, it's not about who you think you are. It's about how people are relating to you. And so now check yourself at the door and find out how we could get past this. And it's very difficult. And then a part of being a part of HR is a lot of, oh, I'm so sorry, and humbling yourself and making people feel comfortable. And that is Christ-like. But they're not going to be Christ-like to you. And so I'm learning that in the position that I'm in, but also learning that in the position I'm in with Christ. Like, I have to show up as the best version of myself. Like, even when people are coming at me and talking mess and doing this and doing that. It's wild. It is really wild. But it also makes me feel like, you guys remember when we were little, the song, "We Are Soldiers in the Army"? Mm-hmm. We have to fight, although we have to die. We have to hold up the bloodstained banner. We have to hold it up until we die. That is the battle. The battle is not physical. It is mental. Like,
yes. 100%. As you're saying that, I'm thinking about what are my experiences at work where I have a very apparent opportunity to be different. And I work in oncology, so it's a lot of angry people, angry at their diagnosis, angry at their prognosis, just angry that this is now a part of their life story. And a lot of times that anger is directed at the messenger, which is oftentimes me. And as you're saying, like, I think I subconsciously realized that this anger is really not about me. It's not for me, but my response and how I come at this situation is going to be memorable for this person. If I don't meet their frustration with love, what they're going to take away from that experience is, if they were to ever find out who I am outwardly, that's really how Christians get down? Because my nurse said that she was Christian, but the way she was talking to me after X, Y, and Z, and you're just like, wow, you really... It's like, I think sometimes we think that our robe of Christianity is something we can take on and off instead of just wearing it all the time. Because if we're treating it like, oh, this is a situation, I have to do X, Y, and Z because of how it looks, that gives me like take on, take off. When it's really just how I should be. Yeah. Right. I don't know if that's making sense. In my brain, okay,
it makes sense.
Just making sure.
Oh yeah. 100%. And with that, it goes back to that maturity, because the more mature you are in Christ, the easier it is to keep that on. Yeah. And when you're new in relationship with Him, when you are new in that, it's easier to be like, oh, here I am, let me respond this way right now. And then, oh wait, I'm with Nicole, let me make sure I'm responding the right way. Like, it's that maturity will travel with you no matter what space you're in.
One of the things that I've been wrestling, that I've wrestled with throughout my life is really how authentic can I be around other church people? How much of myself can other supposed followers of Jesus Christ really handle? And depending on the church culture that you grew up in, it kind of, it takes different shapes. Yeah. And I think that for me, part of my journey has been detaching what I think I should project from my relationship with God. So, case in point, this church is a Seventh-day Adventist church. In general, Seventh-day Adventists are extremely conservative, just in general, as a denomination. So, clothes, diet, those things, very, very stringent on. For me, I like to wear what I want to wear. And I had to get to a point where I walked the fine line of not trying to be offensive while also still being my authentic self. And And it makes me think about Rahab in this way, that God didn't decide to use her after she became something that she would think is acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think it's an opportunity for maturity for everyone, where it's like when you encounter people, do we see that not only does God want to use us, but the people that we come in contact with, regardless of what's going on in their life and how they're acting, that God possibly wants to use them to help us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So think about this. You have these two Israelites, people of God, and now God has decided to use someone who knows nothing about him, who's never worshiped, has never prayed. In fact, her only relationship to God is complete fear about what he's heard that he's done.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now that's the person God's going to use to deliver,
Wow.
to help deliver, to help these people get delivered out of the death trap that they've gotten themselves in.
Yes. Wow.
And yeah. It just kind of pricked my imagination that we really we really need to be our authentic selves
Yeah.
as much as possible because of that. Like when I encounter people outside of church, I don't want them to meet me in church and be like, "Yo, who is that?" type thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like keeping on your love, your Christ-like love
Yeah.
all the time, no matter what space you're in. That should remain the same, but it might look different. I might talk a little more relaxed in front of you, but it's still going to be love.
Right. We should be able to see you consistently throughout those spaces, even if your speech becomes more relaxed.
That's true.
Ooh. Oh, I have some things to marinate on.
And
That
I was
is
thinking,
that's a real challenge, I
It
think,
is.
we should be posing to our viewing audience, is challenging you, because we're at the top of the year, to try.
Mhm.
At least we try, right?
At least we try.
At least we try. To live our lives authentically.
And then I was thinking, just when you said how her only relationship at that point with God was fear, and that was enough to make her make a decision that her life could have ended.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, here we are with all this knowledge of God, and yet it's like I still question, would I be able to do what she did? And all she had was fear. And with all the knowledge we have, it should be more than fear.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's just like, wow, God is incredible.
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 Wow. So much marinating in the mind right now. So much.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
And
here we are.
No, yeah. And one last thing. So this is actually random and kind of, I don't want to say off topic, but I'm just thinking about her faith, right? Because going back to that faith portion, when I think about my own faith and where I want to challenge myself is not questioning so much or needing to know the whys. Because when we think about the story, it could have been they stopped in the prostitute's house for this. It could have been a bunch of things. And I have been reading the Bible starting from Genesis. I'm like, I'm going to get through the whole thing this year. And I find myself, I ask the strangest questions. Literally, I am the queen of, I'm like, okay, so God, it was dark. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. The Spirit of God, he said, let there be light.
Yeah.
And then he saw the light and it was good. Then he separated the light and the dark. So my brain said, wait, were light and darkness happening at the same time because he is God? Was light, did the light encompass the darkness? So there was no darkness and then he pulled the darkness out of the light? Because how does this happen, right?
Yeah.
And but when you think about it, there's no real explanation for how that happened.
Yeah.
And the faith part is knowing that it happened and choosing to believe without all the details.
Mercy. Yeah.
And can we relate that to our circumstances?
Yes.
Because how many things are going to happen to us in this lifetime or have where we I work with a lot of young people that are sometimes really angry with God about the things that they've gone through. And sometimes I'm like, you don't see it now, but you're going to see it later.
Yes.
And then there's some things that you may not ever see.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, you always see them because that's the kind of God that we serve. And I liked what you said because we have to think on those things as it relates to our circumstances. Because as we go through this year, it's only January, and I feel like the things that I've seen in the media, whoa, there's a lot going on. A lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of circumstances. It's wild already. A lot of exposures, right? And it's just the beginning of 2024. What is God going to do in our lives that are going to put us at a place where we're asking why, where we don't need to ask why?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad that you brought that up, especially as this is the beginning of what we're about to do in this year. Sometimes we just don't need to ask. We need to just stand on that faith.
Yeah.
Because we going to have to stand on some faith. There's something in my spirit that this is going to be a great year, but also we are in our ancestors say all the time we're in the end times. Our elders, our ancestors, but there's something about this time that it's in the air. However, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and joy and of sound mind. And some of the questions of why is why we worry.
Yeah.
That part.
You know what I mean?
It is.
If we don't need to know. We don't need to know. And if we need to know, guess who's going to tell us?
Right.
The Most High, period. And so I'm really glad you brought that up because it's really important. This was
I think we've come to the end of another podcast episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are on socials, right?
Yes.
So make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. Also follow us on Instagram and tell a friend.
Yes.
Tell a friend. All right.
Christ
and culture out.
So don't forget to share, like,
and
comment,
subscribe.
and subscribe. Thank you.
All those things.
Christ and culture out.